You're listening to the Maple Money Show, and I hope you also love the Maple Money blog. But the beauty of personal finance blogs is that there's something out there for everyone. While Maple Money's mission is to help all Canadians with various money issues, there are great sites dedicated only to investing or women's finances, or maybe even they write with a humor that attracts someone that might have not been interested otherwise. Harlan Landes is possibly the first personal finance blogger and a money community supporter through the Plutus Awards and Plutus Foundation. He joins us to inspire you to find blogs and bloggers that resonate with where you're at in your personal finance journey. We'll also discuss how to read online content with a critical eye, including if they know what they're talking about and what bias or profit motivation does a writer have. Welcome to the Maple Money Show, the podcast that helps Canadians improve their personal finances to create lasting financial freedom. This episode is made possible by our sponsors at Borrowell. Have you heard the saying, what gets measured gets managed? Borrowell conducted a study that found a correlation between the frequency of checking your credit score and credit score increases. To begin increasing your credit score, head over to maplemoney.com/borrowell. That's maplemoney.com/BORROWELL. Now let's chat with the man previously known as Flexo and Luke, and now Harlan. Hi, Harlan. Welcome to the Maple Money Show.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to have you on to kind of discuss what people can look for in a blog. You've always been very community focused within the personal finance niche. Can you kind of take us right back to the beginning of sort of your internet history of how you sort of built up these communities over time?
Oh, well, I mean, we're going back in time quite a bit here. I started as a middle school kid building communities online, and this was before the web. So friends would install modems in their computers. Like I would tell them, when you get a new computer, make sure you get a modem, or we would open up their computers and put a card in that had a modem. It would allow them to use their phone line to dial up to other computers. And so people would dial into my computer where I was running software that allowed people to share messages, talk to each other, share files, play games. Trade Wars was a huge game. Still love that game. And it exists out there. But anyway, we were building these communities online before there was the web. I ended up getting access to the internet before it was available to a lot of people, because my mother worked for a university and she let me play around with the university dial-in system, which provided things like news groups. So the Usenet news groups were ways for people to talk to each other across the world, ask professional research-related questions. And the only people at the time who were on the internet, again, this is before the web, were people like university professors and researchers, scientists, and the military. So a 12-year-old could ask a question like, is time travel possible? And get like a serious answer, debating the physics of, time and everything that goes into that from a physics professor, across the world. And it was amazing. So yeah, I would ask questions about time travel and video games. So that's where my mind was as like a 12-year-old on the internet. But it was great because there were no trolls, there was no spam. And this was the golden age of the internet. Then AOL came and gave access to everybody who paid their $10 monthly fee for the CD or whatever it was that they got in the mail.
It's probably a floppy back then.
Yeah, even before that, it was a floppy, and everything just went downhill from there. But actually, it didn't really, because it's great now. The web is great, and I kind of moved that whole idea of creating that bulletin board system and started building websites, started teaching my professors at college how to build their websites, and running a website from my computer in the dorm room. Now we pay people like Bluehost and SiteGround and Amazon for hosting. Back then, it was not so strange to actually run the hosting software server on your own computer and have your own IP address. But that's, the web has expanded so much that stuff like that isn't really practical. So anyway, we build websites, and I built websites and started blogging, or at least doing something that was kind of like blogging back in 1994, 1995. And then in around 99, the Blogger software came out, and then everybody became a blogger. And now there are all these websites, and everybody's creating their own communities, and it's great. So that was the early history of me on the web.
So let's get into sort of this personal finance idea. Were you the first blogger, or at least as far as you know, maybe?
Yeah, I think I was the first blogger to start a blog that was focused primarily on personal finance. Certainly, I wasn't the first person to talk about money online, and I probably wasn't the first person to blog about money. But as far as I know, I was the first person who created a blog specifically to talk about my financial problems, my journey, and to help myself improve, and to just write about money every day. There was another early site called pfblog.com, and I'm pretty sure that we started fairly around the same time. And I think I was out there first, although if you looked at the site at the time, if you looked at pfblog.com, there were some earlier dated articles that I think he put up afterward.
I also would suggest that nobody visit that site, because the last time I did, it actually tripped my antivirus.
Oh,
so,
okay.
so it still exists, but it might not be very well maintained right now.
Okay, well, maybe we should bleep out the censored and make sure we don't lead anybody to a porn site accidentally.
Well, no, the real site's there. It's just it did pop up my antivirus, so that it might be hacked or something. But
okay.
So you've also built up online communities. Not everyone will understand what this is, but the idea of like blog carnivals or other ways of sort of featuring other bloggers and helping people find this content. Mm-hmm. And that's also led now to things like the Plutus Awards. Could you kind of go into how some of those past sites and the Plutus Awards help people find this content?
Sure. So when I started, like we talked about, when I started Consumerism Commentary, that was the name of my site that I started in 2003. July 18th, 2003 was the date I launched that and had my first post. There were no other personal finance sites, and but I was getting a lot of my information, and I was learning a lot and sharing it. A lot of the things I was learning were from sites like CNN Money, which usually had some good information on it, and the Motley Fool discussion boards, which were always interesting. So those were some of the places that I went to get information or to learn about money myself, and then write about the things that I was learning. And this, for some reason, other people also began writing about money in blog form. And, over the course of the next few years, there became more and more personal finance bloggers, we would call them at the time. So as this group of us started growing, I would always find these sites and then reach out to people and say, hey, how you doing? And comment on their site if they allowed comments, because back then a lot of blogs didn't have the commenting feature built in. Oh. So we would find ways to communicate. I'd reach out to them, email them, whatever, and let them know that, hey, I've got a site too. You should come check it out. And as a result of communication like that, we kind of built closer relationships, and we began talking more and talking about blogging and talking about the things that we could do to get more readers to all of our sites, which is, may not have been our initial intent. Like very rarely at that point had I started a website thinking that, well, okay, I'm going to start this website. How am I going to get readers? it just wasn't really all that interesting to me. It was more interesting for me to put something out into the world. If somebody finds it, they find it, but I wasn't too concerned with anything beyond that. But anyway, we started talking to all the bloggers. We all talked to each other, and it was kind of the birth of a community here. And more people started doing this, and a few of us decided, when there was maybe 50 or 100 or so of these, that we wanted to help as many people as possible. And one way we could do that is by just solidifying this idea of a network as part of the community. So we created the Money Blog Network, which was me and 5 or 6 other bloggers at the time who were kind of seen as some of the top bloggers in personal finance. So we just started talking together and sharing ideas and sharing. By that point, people accepted the whole idea of AdSense and advertising on blogs, which wasn't always something that was accepted among the general population, I guess you could say. But it was more normal for blogs to accept money from advertisers. And so we would work with each other and share any leads that we got or any other avenues for actually earning money from our websites, which again was something that was not really part of my plan when I launched. Had no idea that. I knew that some blogs could make money, but it just didn't seem like it didn't seem like something that was worth putting a lot of effort into at the time.
I didn't really think it was a money making venture when I started either. It was just sort of a chance to share some my angle on personal finance.
Yeah, but if you could put up some AdSense ads and make back the money that you're spending on hosting, then sure, it's worthwhile. And it turned out growing quite a bit after that. But so the Money Blog Network was out there, and that was one way that we could network with each other and create this more feeling of a community and help people. So that was one thing. There was a cool idea that I came across because someone else was doing something, and it was the idea of taking the latest articles from all of these blogs, and we're talking about probably a couple hundred at this point, and just having a website where people could go and they just see all the latest posts from these couple hundred blogs. And someone else was doing this, and he was running ads on the website, the person who was doing this. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, I'm all for putting ads on a website if it's your own website and your own content. Now here you are, like, taking content without permission from 100 or so bloggers, putting your own ads on it, and now you're making money off of someone else's content. Like, yes, there's the whole idea that, well, he's created this website and that should be worth something, and that's fine. So I decided, leave. I'm not going to complain about this. What I'll do is I'll take 24 hours. I will write my own program that will do exactly what he wrote his program, his software to do. I used resources like, different programming packages that would kind of help with this. And anyway, I built a website that did exactly the same thing, no ads, and made it more community focused, worked with the community rather than just kind of like taking things without permission, and then built that website called pfblogs.org. So that was in one of my early community efforts. Another one is, like you said, the Carnival of Personal Finance. That was a weekly roundup of the best personal finance articles. This is all going to sound familiar because it's been done in a lot of different ways, on a lot of different sites. In fact, we're getting to the point where at the Plutus Awards, we are doing this exact same thing and keeping it on our website. But anyway, the Carnival of Personal Finance it ended up being more than just, picking 5 articles a week. It was a lengthy process, and sometimes there were like 50 or 60 links included. This ended up being a bad idea SEO wise, but at first it was great community building because it was hosted by someone else in the community every week. And that week they would go through the process of weeding through articles and picking out, 20, 30, 40 of their favorites and putting them on a website. I'd gotten the idea from a similar thing in a different niche. Somehow I came across the Carnival of Education, and it was basically the same idea. And I thought, well, this is a cool idea. There's a community of bloggers here who are all involved in education. And I'm a part of this community that's bloggers focused on personal finance. We should do this. And so I brought the idea over to the community, and we probably did something like, 4 or 5 years of the Carnival of Personal Finance before it just kind of, I let it go to someone else within the community after I sold my website, and it just really wasn't the best way to moderate content. It was fine for the time, and then other things kind of supplanted it, I guess you could say.
Well, and nowadays, social media, there's things like Twitter and stuff that didn't exist at the time, but that's sort of an easy way that someone can find this content. Let's wait on Plutus Awards, because that's still an active thing. We'll put that at the end. I wanted to ask you sort of what you thought about what attracts people to blogs compared to here in Canada, say the Globe and Mail. Like what about that sort of personal experience is sort of makes people get hooked on these blogs?
There's two things that I can think of. First of all, there's the personal voice. When you're reading on something like on Globe and Mail, or you're reading CNN or the New York Times, New York Times doesn't even have their money section anymore, as far as I know. But that type of content is fantastic for informational stuff, for things that you need to know, and great advice for managing your money. So you could say the same thing about blogs, but the difference is the voice, right? It's more personal. It'll include personal stories. I used consumerism commentary to track my progress over time, and a lot of people use their blogs to do the same thing. And that, for me, is just so much more interesting, personal, and you can make those personal connections with the person you're reading about, the person who's writing, or in the case of podcasts, the person who's speaking. And I think that's one of the crucial pieces that attracts people, and why people should be attracted to this type of writing. And the second thing is the editorial process. And you are just a lot more free to be yourself, to let your personality shine through, and from a reader's perspective, that comes through. And there's an immediacy to it. Of course, a lot of the news sites now are a lot more immediate than they used to be. You wouldn't see an article published online until it was in the newspaper the same day, which meant that they couldn't react to things happening, the day of, as readily as they do now. But even as the mainstream media, let's call it, the big media websites have gotten a lot more nimble. They still can't beat the immediacy of blogs. You just sit down and you don't even sit down at a computer anymore. You just type up your blog post on your phone. It's so easy and it's so quick that it leads. It's not a perfect system. I mean, there's a purpose to having an editorial process in place, right? It makes sure that you've checked your facts, or somebody's checked your facts. You get another pair of eyes on it. You get formatting. There are so many things that go into the editorial process that are important, but at the same time, with a personal financial blog and emphasis on the personal, there's just so much you can react to quickly, and not have to worry so much about the editorial process. Of course, you still want to get all your facts right, but and you want to know as a reader that what you're reading has been verified and fact checked, and it's someone that you can trust. But just the immediacy of blogs is something that's really attractive.
Yeah. So we touched on editorial process. So one of the things that can be a negative of blogs is sort of knowing which sites you can trust. Now, granted, you could say the same about mainstream media as well, but there's with blogs, especially a lot of people, especially if they're not used to this kind of format, there's a little bit more concern about things like how is that blogger making money, or do they even know what they're talking about? If they're speaking sort of from authority and not their own personal experience. Can you kind of tell us how maybe we can kind of look at this with a critical eye to make sure that what we're reading is factual and meaningful?
Yeah, well, I think this gets to the root of a concept called media literacy, which is important. I mean, we talk about financial literacy a lot because we're financial bloggers, and we know that it's important for kids to learn about managing their money at an early age so that they can survive as an adult. But one thing that we don't talk about too much, but is starting to have more of a role in schools, is this concept of media literacy. How do you know whether what you're watching on TV, and this isn't just the internet, but what you're watching on TV, what you're reading, how do you critically evaluate the information that's coming to you? And I believe that media literacy is a bigger problem in the modern world even than financial literacy. But this you and one of the I mean I can't even know exactly where to begin with kind of teaching somebody how to comprehend and understand the motivation behind any piece of information that you're receiving. But it also goes to explain why, as a society, we're so susceptible to things like propaganda and advertising, and any type of information that is designed to sway somebody is and plays at people's emotions. It is just so attractive, and people will be susceptible to the messages that they're receiving without having a critical approach. And it's important to maintain a critical eye and be fully understanding of more than just the content that's in your face when you're looking at blogs, whether you're watching a TV show, whether you're reading a news or opinion piece. I think it comes down to understanding what the motivation is behind the piece of content that you're consuming. Is it trying to get me to have an opinion? Is it trying to get me to make a decision? Is it trying to get me to spend money? Is it trying to get me to is it using me as a way to earn money for just by the fact that I'm now a reader of this, now I'm being counted as part of the audience. So what is the motivation there? And a lot of that can be hard to figure out. And we tend to rely on things like FTC disclosures to say, well, what you're about to read is informational and it's my opinion, but also I may be paid if you end up buying something off of this website. So we can look for things like that, but that's not always going to be clear. And I think it's really important as consumers of content, of media, to have a good understanding of what someone's motivation is when they're putting together the piece of content or media that you're consuming. And that is so hard to do because a lot of that it can be easily hidden. So you've got to really consider the source and learn about it before you go ahead and make any decisions on it that might affect your life in a way that you don't want it to be affected.
For sure. Here in Canada, we don't have the FTC disclosures, but I'm a huge fan of them. It's just good to put that out there, like to explain like that this is how the site makes money.
Yeah,
the fact that it doesn't sort of change our opinion in the post.
And the question is, well, okay, so what does the FTC disclosure work? Like, first of all, does the fact that I'm getting paid by Chase, let's say, for someone who comes to my website, they see a review of a Chase credit card, and they decide to click on over to Chase and purchase or sign up for the credit card based on the positive review that I gave on the website. How do I know that my opinion hasn't been affected by not even the fact that there's a financial transaction, but the potential of there being a financial transaction? Like people might not even have affiliate relationships or might not be getting paid from credit cards, but they're thinking that someday they might want to be a person who gets paid for writing their reviews of credit cards. So they want to be honest. And I struggled with this too. As I made it clear every time I wrote about credit cards, as clear as I could, that there are certain people that I would recommend credit cards for, and there are certain people that I would not recommend credit cards for. And I tried to make that distinction. Regardless of that, how much of what I wrote was still affected by the fact that I was either getting paid or could have been getting paid for a successful lead generation. And I think it's something that you have to consider, even when there's no clear relationship with say someone with an advertiser.
Yeah, I've been questioned on this too. And it's good because people should be looking at this critically, but I wish I could be as upfront as showing what I get paid, because in no way am I ordering things based on who pays the highest or if I get paid at all. About half the credit cards on my site, there's no relationship with, but it's hard to fully get that across in a blog post. But when people will email me and they'll ask, and it's a fair question, like the idea, like, is your number one card just what pays the highest? In the top two categories I write about, the number one card is literally what's in my wallet, which makes me feel okay with that and justified in that I can actually recommend the cards I use. But it's totally a fair question. Now, I wanted to,
and I'm just going to say it's only one of the questions. And, just because someone is getting paid doesn't mean that the information is not accurate or not useful or is biased in some way. It's again, looking at the bigger picture and figuring out what information you can trust and if there's anything in there that you can't trust.
For sure. So can we move on to the Plutus Awards now?
Yeah.
I want to point out one of my favorite things about this, and I don't want to steal your thunder about talking about one of my favorite things is the fact it's sort of peer reviewed. The people that are winning and even nominated, I believe, are kind of pass through this panel of peers. So those that kind of go on to be nominated or win, there's sort of a process there that maybe if someone's reviewing the site, they can reviewing the Plutus Awards site, they can kind of trust in those sites a little bit more than something that's totally unknown. But in your own words, can you kind of just say how people can use the Plutus Awards, the whole process, the site, everything, just as a regular reader that's sort of looking for some new blogs?
Yeah, this is a perfect segue, I think, because we're talking about how you trust the things that you read. And because of the peer review process for the Plutus Awards, I feel that if you take a look at the finalists and you take a look at the winners, you can find a selection of the absolute best and some of the most trustworthy places to find financial type of content, whether it's blogs or podcasts, videos, whatever it is. We've got it at the Plutus Awards, and everything has been put through a process to determine which really are the best. And of course, it changes every year, so we do this every year. But the process doesn't change every year. The process is very similar. This is what we've had in place for a long time. But we have a group of anywhere between 30 and 60 volunteers who review submissions and entries from all across the web for the best financial content out there. And these are reviewed. It's broken into groups and reviewed. We don't, that kind of, it would be kind of crazy if we had each person on the panel reviewing, tens of dozens of submissions in 30 categories. That would just be way too unmanageable for everybody. So we have it split up so everybody has a reasonable amount of consideration to do, and there's a voting process that takes place within the panel. It's kind of like the Academy of Motion Pictures, where there's a smaller group of people that is representative of the wide community, although we try to be a little more representative of the wider community than, say, the Academy of Motion Pictures. But we do try to take diversity of content and a whole bunch of different aspects of the community into account when we do this. So we have this group of people who vote on the submissions. We end up with a group of finalists, and then there's a final vote to determine the winners in each category. So it's a great way to find the right blog that matches the content that you're looking for, or the personality that you're looking for. By looking through the Plutus Awards and the selection of winners and finalists, you are guaranteed to find something that speaks to you and presents great information the way you want to consume it, and is entertaining at the level that you want it to be, is informational at the level that you want it to be, and is all around just a great a community of their own to be a part of.
This has been great. I think people will be very inspired to go find some more blogs. I'm glad they're listening to the Maple Money Show, but there's other things out there. So I'm happy for them to go check out the Plutus Awards site and find some other sites. Can you let everyone know what else you've been up to, especially with the Plutus Foundation?
Yeah, so the Plutus Awards, this is our 10th year with the Plutus Awards. So this is a big year for us. We're really excited about celebrating that. But a few years ago, me and a few others built the Plutus Foundation to be around the Plutus Awards, and it's a financial literacy nonprofit, but the focus for us is on the financial media, this community that we've been talking about since what we started at the beginning of the call, talking about 2003 with consumerism commentary, this whole financial blogging, podcasting, video community. So we want to support them as they go out and they create their own personal financial literacy projects in their communities or online, or if they have efforts, we will support them with different types of resources, whether it's money or content or social media help, whatever it is that we can provide to help them, that is what we do. So one of our own programs, which we just launched in November last year with a preview, and then the first one this year, is Plutus Voices, which is sort of like a networking event where there's also a couple of speakers who talk for a short time, but they talk on really important topics. And there's an interesting element to these events that gets everybody involved, and we don't like to really talk about it too much until people get there so they can kind of react to it without any kind of preconceived notions. But it's a really fun activity, and we are bringing that to Phoenix and LA in the spring, and in the fall we'll be at some other locations throughout the country.
Sounds great. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Harlan, for the advice on how to dive into the online pool of personal finance blogs. You can find the show notes for this episode at MapleMoney.com/Harlan Landes. So, if you subscribed to the MapleMoney newsletter recently, you may have noticed that the links to all the downloadables were broken. Sorry for the issues, but they're now not only fixed, but I use this opportunity to update the look to match the MapleMoney site. I'll leave a link to the download section in the next few emails that go out, so you can hop back there and get your budget files and checklists. And if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, head over to MapleMoney.com/newsletter, now with working links, and we'll see you next week.